Watching thoughts circle without an exit. There is a particular kind of tiredness that does not come from the body but from the mind pacing itself into a corner, a fatigue born from watching the same thoughts walk past you again and again like strangers in a narrow hallway, each one carrying the same questions, the same fears, the same unfinished sentences. And you may recognize this exhaustion as the quiet ache that arrives when you try to sleep but your mind refuses to lie down, when the day is over but your thoughts insist it has not yet been solved, because somewhere deep inside the brain a loop has been formed, not out of weakness or failure, but out of a nervous system that learned long ago that vigilance was safer than rest, that repetition was protection, that staying alert meant staying alive, and so it keeps circling, scanning for an exit that was never clearly marked. Neuroscience tells us that these loops are not random. They are patterns etched into networks of neurons that fire together because they have fired together before, reinforced by emotion, strengthened by fear, polished smooth by time, and when the brain senses uncertainty it returns to what is familiar even if what is familiar is painful, because predictability feels safer than the unknown, and so the mind replays, rehearses, rechecks, reimagines, believing that one more round might finally produce relief, like a person pacing a locked room convinced that if they just touch every wall enough times a door will eventually appear. You might notice how these thoughts have a particular texture, a heaviness that presses behind the eyes or a tightening in the chest, because thinking is never just thinking, it is a full-body event, involving hormones, muscles, breath, and memory. And when thoughts circle without an exit the body learns to stay partially braced, shoulders lifted slightly, jaw tight, breath shallow, as if preparing for something that never quite arrives. And over time this state begins to feel like your personality rather than a temporary condition. But if we slow down enough to look with kindness instead of frustration, we can begin to see that these circling thoughts are not trying to torture you. They are trying to protect you from something they once believed was unbearable, perhaps an old loss, an unanswered question, a moment when you felt powerless and vowed, without words, to never be caught unprepared again. The brain is a historian as much as it is a predictor, and when it senses a familiar emotional temperature it pulls out old maps, even if those maps no longer match the terrain, and this is why logic alone rarely dissolves a mental loop. Because the loop is not sustained by reason but by remembered sensation, by the echo of an earlier self who learned that thinking was the only available form of control. In these moments, many people try to fight their thoughts, to push them away or shame themselves for not being able to stop, but this often tightens the loop because resistance itself becomes another signal of danger, another reason for the brain to stay alert, and so the thoughts return louder, faster, more insistent, like children knocking harder on a door when they feel unheard. What if instead of trying to escape the circle, you simply watched it with gentle curiosity, noticing the way each thought follows the last, noticing how familiar they are, almost scripted, and how little new information they actually bring, and as you watch you might begin to sense a subtle shift, because observation recruits a different neural network than rumination, one associated with awareness rather than threat. And this alone can soften the intensity, like dimming a light rather than smashing the bulb. You may notice that beneath the thoughts there is often a feeling that has been waiting quietly, perhaps anxiety, sadness, loneliness, or a vague sense of unfinished grief, and the thoughts have been orbiting this feeling like moons around a planet, trying to keep it contained, because feelings are experienced as less predictable, less controllable, and therefore more dangerous to a nervous system trained to survive by thinking ahead. Yet feelings, unlike thoughts, have a natural life cycle. When allowed to move through the body they rise, crest, and fall like waves, but when they are bypassed through endless thinking they linger, unresolved, fueling the very loops meant to avoid them. The mind does not circle because it is broken, it circles because at some point circling worked, it kept you functioning, it kept you moving forward when stopping felt impossible, and honoring that history is part of healing, because the brain listens more deeply to appreciation than to criticism. As you sit with this understanding, you might gently ask, not with urgency but with kindness, What is the thought beneath the thought? What is the fear beneath the question? What is the younger version of me trying to make sure never happens again? And you may not receive a clear answer right away, because insight unfolds at the pace of safety, not demand. The brain needs to feel that it is no longer alone in carrying the burden, that awareness is now present, watching with compassion rather than judgment, and this presence itself becomes a new experience, a new memory that can slowly rewrite the old loop. Over time, with patience, the circling thoughts may begin to lose their urgency, not because you forced them to stop, but because they finally felt seen, because the system realized that there is an adult awareness now capable of feeling what was once overwhelming, and in that moment you begin to sense that the circle was never meant to be escaped but gently understood as a signal, a language the nervous system learned when it did not yet have words, a quiet code written in repetition rather than sentences, and when you allow yourself to stay with it instead of running, something unexpected begins to happen, because the brain, when met with safety, starts to loosen its grip, not all at once, not dramatically, but subtly, like a fist slowly realizing it no longer needs to stay clenched. The thoughts may still appear, but they arrive with less urgency, like echoes instead of alarms, and you begin to notice small gaps between them, moments of silence that feel unfamiliar at first, almost suspicious, because the system has been trained to equate quiet with danger, yet these gaps are where healing quietly enters. In neuroscience, this is the moment when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for perspective and integration, gently comes back online, not to dominate the mind, but to sit beside the older survival circuits and say, I am here now, you don't have to do this alone anymore. And when that happens, the body often responds before the mind does, perhaps with a deeper breath, a softening in the belly, a warmth spreading through the chest, because the body has been waiting for permission to stand down from its long watch. You may feel a wave of emotion rise unexpectedly, sadness without a clear story, relief mixed with grief, because part of healing is realizing how long you have been holding yourself together through sheer mental effort, how many nights you stayed awake thinking because feeling felt too risky, and there can be a tenderness in recognizing that younger version of you who did the best they could with the tools they had. This is not the collapse people fear when they stop thinking, it is a release, a recalibration, the nervous system learning a new rhythm that includes rest. As the emotional wave moves through, you may notice that it does not destroy you, that it does not last forever, and this lived experience is far more convincing to the brain than any reassurance could ever be, because the brain learns through experience, not instruction, and now it has evidence that feelings can be survived, that stillness does not equal danger, that you can remain present without falling apart. Gradually, the thoughts that once circled endlessly begin to reorganize themselves, no longer looping tightly around fear but spreading out, making room for nuance, for uncertainty that does not need to be solved immediately, and this is where wisdom quietly grows, not as answers, but as trust in your capacity to meet life as it unfolds. You may find that when a familiar loop begins again, you can recognize it sooner, feel it in the body earlier, and instead of climbing inside the thought, you place a gentle hand on the sensation beneath it, offering attention where attention was once missing, and often that is enough for the loop to soften, because what it wanted all along was not resolution but relationship. Over time, watching thoughts circle without an exit becomes less frightening, because you understand that the circle itself is not a trap but a message, and messages lose their intensity once they are received. There may still be days when the mind returns to old habits, especially during stress or fatigue, and this does not mean you are failing, it means you are human, with a nervous system shaped by history, and each return is another opportunity to practice meeting yourself with compassion instead of control. Healing, in this way, is not about eliminating loops but about changing your relationship to them, from being caught inside to standing beside, from being driven by fear to being guided by awareness. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you may notice that life feels a little wider, that silence feels less threatening, that your sense of self is no longer confined to the contents of your mind but anchored in something deeper, steadier, a quiet presence that can watch thoughts come and go like leaves on water without needing to follow them downstream. In this space, rest becomes possible, creativity returns, and the future no longer feels like a problem to solve but a landscape to walk through at your own pace, knowing that even when the mind circles again, you now carry an inner exit not as a door you must find, but as an embodied knowing that you are safe enough to stay. If this story softens something inside you, feel free to share which part resonated most with you. And if you'd like more neuroscience-rooted reflections offered with gentleness, you're welcome to follow along.